With control claimed in the Lashkar province, the Taliban have captured 15 provincial capitals in its violent push for power. The terror group says it has captured the Afghan city of Lashkar, a city in the southwest of Afghanistan, and the capital of the Helmand province. Lashkar is amid the latest to fall following a string of attacks unleashed by the Taliban. It comes hours after it claimed to capture Kandahar and Herat. According to sources, military and government officials had evacuated the city after striking a deal with the terrorists. It means that only the capital, Kabul, and minor pockets of other territories are left in the Afghan government's control. A Taliban spokesperson tweeted about the fall of Kandahar. He said the city is completely conquered. This comes after the third largest city, the oasis of Afghanistan, Herat, also fell to the Taliban. The government and security forces had to withdraw to prevent further destruction. A Taliban spokesperson had tweeted the latest victory over the city of Herat. All provincial buildings, including the governor's office, police headquarters and other facilities, had been completely taken over there. These are the visuals from Herat after the Taliban's capture. The government's armoured vehicles can be seen retreating from the area. These are the visuals from the police headquarters in Herat, where the Taliban have hoisted their flag over the police headquarters. Dozens of military vehicles, weapons and ammunition have fallen into the hands of the Taliban. The city was under siege for weeks. The Afghan army, veteran warlords, even civilian fighters could not hold it for too long. The terror group tore through its defence lines, moved through the streets, battling the government forces, and closed highways and airports too. It took a matter of days for the Taliban to overturn the Afghan troops. The capture of major provincial capitals represents the Taliban's biggest military victory since they began their offensive in May of this year. Next on the target list is Kabul. We at WION have been constantly bringing you details from the ground there. WION's correspondent Anas Malik sent this report from Kabul.
Well, the Taliban continue with their advances and they now have claimed 5 provincial capitals in the past 24 hours. The first to fall yesterday was the province of Ghazni, which is 150 kilometers to east of Kabul. Then we saw the fall of Badghis province. Its capital, Kilaidnor, was overrun by the Taliban. It was previously also claimed to have been overrun, but it was taken back by the forces. Badghis also borders Turkmenistan in one of its districts, that is the Mokkar district. Then we saw in the evening claims by the Taliban of the fall of Kandahar to them. They put out videos. After that, we saw the fall of Herat and the Taliban overrunning the district of Guzara, which houses the Herat airport and the UN office as well. After that, very late last night, we saw the claim of them taking over Lashkar, the capital of Helmand province, and the government says that they would want to put up a fight. They are putting up a fight rather. The people here in Kabul expect the government to put up a fight. There is a growing sense of insecurity. The government in the past 24 hours has claimed to have killed more than 300 plus Taliban men, a claim that has been rebutted by the Taliban spokesperson. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan for WION World is One.
The United States, the UK and Canada are sending troops to Kabul, Afghanistan's capital city, which has been encircled by the Taliban terror group. 3,000 American soldiers will be sent to the international airport there to evacuate US embassy staff as the Taliban makes gains. Back in May, when the US President Joe Biden announced the complete troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, he'd hoped for an orderly one. But the current crisis in Kabul and the escalating war today echoes the fall of Saigon in 1975, an image the United States desperately wants to avoid.
Weeks of intense war in Afghanistan has almost reached its tipping point. The Taliban has captured over 2/3 of Afghanistan and is closing in on its capital, Kabul. As the battle gets even more fierce, the United States has pumped in American troops in Afghanistan to evacuate embassy staff from Kabul.
This is not abandonment. This is not an evacuation. This is not the wholesale withdrawal. What this is a reduction in the size of our civilian footprint. This is a drawdown of civilian Americans who will, in many cases, be able to perform their important functions elsewhere, whether that's in the United States or elsewhere in the region. So the message shouldn't be, the implications of this shouldn't be outsized.
President Biden aimed at an early troop withdrawal, but the chaos in Kabul has revived painful US memories of the fall of Saigon. A 1975 photo of evacuees boarding a helicopter on the roof of a building immortalized America's defeat in Vietnam. In June this year, as the Taliban advance built momentum, Biden himself addressed the Saigon parallels and dismissed them out of hand.
There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan.
The chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, also rejected comparisons to the departure exit from Saigon. He said, "I do not see that unfolding. I may be wrong, who knows? You can't predict the future. But I don't see Saigon 1975 in Afghanistan." Leading Republican lawmaker Mitch McConnell slammed Joe Biden for his withdrawal strategy. He said, "The latest news of a further drawdown at our embassy and a hasty deployment of military forces seem like preparations for the fall of Kabul." President Biden's decisions have us hurtling toward an even worse sequel to the humiliating fall of Saigon in 1975. 3,000 American soldiers will secure the airport and carry out evacuation of American staff from its embassy. 1,000 soldiers will be sent to Qatar for technical and logistical support, while 3,500 to 4,000 will be positioned in Kuwait to deploy if needed. That is over 7,500 American soldiers. When Pentagon spokesman John Kirby was asked about the inevitable comparisons with the fall of Saigon, Kirby tried to underline the differences.
All right, a couple things at the top. We're not completely eliminating our diplomatic presence on the ground. Nobody is abandoning Afghanistan. It's not walking away from it. It's doing the right thing at the right time to protect our people.
The U.S. has been slowly pulling its embassy forces out of Afghanistan since April. It just now wants to speed it up. So it's again going to great lengths to kind of dispel that notion that this is going to be helicopters landing on the roof and troops rappelling down and pulling people up and flying away quickly. But the question was asked at the Pentagon that it seems odd that you're on the one hand slightly downplaying it, on the other hand, you're sending 3 infantry battalions, ground forces, paratroopers in to do this, to pull far fewer people out. Does that almost seem like overkill? And again, both at the Pentagon and the State Department trying to project that sense of calm, saying, we just have to protect our people.
The Taliban has captured 15 provincial capitals in Afghanistan in just 8 days. This kind of battlefield momentum has never been seen before. The 8-day blitz has left only the capital Kabul and pockets of other territories in government hands. For US President Joe Biden, who had hoped for an orderly US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the current crisis echoed the fall of Saigon in 1975, an image that he wanted to avoid. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's take a look now at how the political situation is developing in Qatar. That's the site of the Taliban's political office. Ambassadors from the United States, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, the UK, Qatar and China have called for an accelerated peace process for Afghanistan. All participants, including the United Nations and the European Union, say it's a matter of great urgency and have called for an immediate halt to attacks on provincial capitals and cities in Afghanistan. In a statement issued after the talks in Qatar, envoys reaffirmed that foreign capitals would not recognise any government in Afghanistan imposed through the use of military force. The statement also urged both sides to take steps to reach a political settlement and comprehensive ceasefire as quickly as possible. The high-level meetings held held in Doha are aimed at breaking a deadlock in peace talks. The US-led forces are set to leave Afghanistan by the end of the month, whilst the Taliban terrorists are rapidly gaining ground in Afghanistan. The United Nations warns if the offensive reaches the Afghan capital, Kabul, it would have catastrophic impacts on the civilians there.
We are continuing to engage with the Taliban in Doha. I mean, we are continuing to believe that there is a political solution that can be had. This doesn't mean that we are also blind to what is going on on the ground. We hope that the discussions this week in Doha between representatives of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and the Taliban, along with regional and international envoys, will restore the pathway to a negotiated settlement to the conflict.
The U.S. clearly now has very little confidence that the Afghan government and its security forces can actually protect the capital of Kabul. So on one track, the State Department says it's going to start pulling out more of its personnel from the embassy. So the Pentagon says roughly 3,000 American troops from some infantry battalions are going to deploy to the airport in Kabul to help provide that. It's going to great pains to say these are not combat forces per se. They are not there to wage war.
In a shocking incident in Plymouth in the UK, 6 people, including a child, are dead after a mass shooting in which the suspected gunman also died. The police say it was unrelated to terrorism.
6 people, including a child, were killed in a mass shooting in southwest England on Thursday evening, a rare incident which British officials called shocking. Police said 2 women and 3 men, including the suspect, died at the scene from gunshot wounds, while another woman died shortly after at the hospital. The United Kingdom has one of the lowest gun homicide rates in the world. Thursday's incident was the country's first mass shooting in over a decade. Police had earlier described the shooting as a serious firearms incident and said the situation was contained. They added that the incident was not terrorism-related. Local media quoted a witness who said a gunman kicked in the front door of a home before shooting a mother and her daughter. The witness added she had been told that the gunman was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Local media reported that after the attack, the suspect escaped through a park behind the house and shot 2 dog walkers. The Southwestern Ambulance Service said multiple ambulances, air ambulances, doctors and senior paramedics responded to the incident. Local police said they are investigating and that further road disruption in the area is expected.
In what's said to be the country's greatest ecological disaster in decades, Greece continues to suffer from a deadly heatwave. The Prime Minister said the event had exceeded all preparations. These visuals are from the second largest island of Greece, where more than 50,000 hectares of forest lands are up in flames. In excess of 800 Greek and foreign firefighters are trying to douse the flames in different parts of the country. The fire started in early August and thousands of people had to be evacuated in the capital, Athens, after fires wrecked homes and the livelihoods of residents there. Around 100,000 hectares of forests and farmlands in the country had been engulfed by these wildfires. Respite did come in the form of overnight rains and falling temperatures, but the heat spell is expected to soar in the coming weeks. Greece's Prime Minister says safeguarding human lives is the first priority of the government. Compensations and forest land reforms were also promised by the Prime Minister. He's accused, though, by the leader of the opposition of evading responsibilities and management failure. The latest weather events follow a Code Red report from the United Nations warning the world is warming faster than previously feared. Most of the Mediterranean countries near to Greece, including Italy, Algeria and Turkey, have been dubbed as climate change hotspots. Sources suggest that Canada could go into a snap election on September 20th as the Trudeau government seeks voter approval for plans to combat COVID-19. Mr. Trudeau currently has a minority government and relies on other parties to push through legislations. The Prime Minister is likely to make an announcement this coming weekend.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is planning a snap election next month, betting voters will reward his COVID-19 response and put his minority government back in full control of Parliament. 4 sources familiar with the matter told Reuters Trudeau is set to make the announcement on Sunday. Aides to the Prime Minister have said for months that the ruling Liberals would push for a vote before the end of 2021, 2 years ahead of schedule. Trudeau only has a minority government and relies on other parties to push through legislation. In recent months, he has complained about what he calls opposition obstruction. The Liberals racked up record levels of debt as they spent heavily to shield individuals and businesses from COVID-19. They plan to inject billions more, between 3% and 4% of GDP, into the economy over the next 3 years. The official opposition Conservatives, Trudeau's main rivals, say his spending is excessive and will leave future generations hobbled by debt. Liberals acknowledge a call for an election now would be a gamble. A survey by polling firm Abacus on Thursday put the Liberals at 37% support and the Conservatives at 28%. That suggests Trudeau could well regain control of the House of Commons.
It's been more than a year since the coronavirus pandemic began, and COVID has claimed more than 4 million lives across the planet. But there is still questions about its origins, and calls for further probes have been mounting. Yet China, the place where it's thought to have begun, continues to reject the World Health Organization's calls for a renewed investigation, saying the move was politically motivated. It claims the efforts were more political than scientific. China had earlier dubbed a similar request by the WHO as being disrespectful towards science. The World Health Organization has asked China to provide raw data on early COVID-19 outbreaks. A WHO team carried out a probe in China in January this year. However, experts were not given access to raw data, and that meant they had to rely on the information provided only by China. The UN Health Agency insists it's important to know about the origins of COVID to prevent future outbreaks. It also demanded access to the virology lab in Wuhan, the Chinese city where the first coronavirus case was reported in late 2019. There is speculation, currently unproven, that the COVID-19 virus may have leaked from a lab in Wuhan. The US has been at the forefront of demanding an independent probe into COVID origins. Former President Donald Trump, of course, pulled the country out of the WHO after quote-unquote China bias. The move was reversed by the current President Joe Biden. The US and China are the World Health Organization's largest donors. Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Jay Lee has been released from a Seoul prison on parole, having been convicted of bribery and embezzlement. South Korean President Moon Jae-in called on the public for understanding the reasons for his release and said the decision to release Lee was in the national interest. Meanwhile, civic groups in the country have slammed his parole, calling it a sign of leniency for the business elite.
Samsung's jailed leader, J.Y. Lee, was released on parole on Friday. Lee was convicted of bribery and embezzlement and had been serving time at a detention center in South Korea's capital, Seoul. He spoke to the media after his release, looking thinner than when he was last detained in January.
I've caused much concern for the people. I deeply apologize. I'm listening to the concerns, criticisms, worries, and high expectations for me. I will work hard.
Friday's development comes as good news to Samsung, where anxiety has grown over big investment decisions, which company sources say should be made by Lee. Though it has not affected the day-to-day running of the world's largest memory chip and smartphone manufacturer. One potential decision Lee will have to ponder: the location of a $17 billion U.S. plant to produce chips amid a global shortage. Before he goes back to work, Lee will still need to gain permission from the country's justice ministry, an act expected to be more of a formality. Lee has served 18 months of a revised 30-month sentence. He initially served 1 year of a 5-year sentence from 2017, which was suspended, a court decision later overturned. Lee was sent back to jail in January with a shortened sentence.
Zambia will soon announce the result of its presidential vote. The election is seen as one of the most tightly contested races in the country. Internet services, though, have been suspended in Zambia, fueling suspicion about the outcome. On Twitter and Facebook, residents say they're using virtual private networks, or VPNs, to get around the restrictions. Millions of Zambians kept voting at jammed polling stations even after polls closed on Thursday. The high turnout is being alluded to the rising anger over the country's economic fallout. The winner of the election faces the task of boosting Zambia's tanking economy. The incumbent President Edgar Lungu, the leader of the Patriotic Front, is vying for re-election. Mr. Lungu has been in power since 2015, and under his leadership, Zambia has drifted into one of its worst financial crises. United Party for National Development's leader and businessman Hakainde Hichilema is contesting against the incumbent president. He has for long criticised Mr. Lungu's economic mismanagement and vowed to create jobs if he comes to power. He remains confident there will be a change in leadership.
We are confident that we'll carry the day. People want change. You can see it in their faces. You can hear what they want. And the important thing is that the decision of who becomes president, who leads this country, must be determined by the Zambian people, the voters, not the people who count the votes.
Under Prime Minister Lungu, Zambia made infrastructural progress, but the pandemic has hit the copper mining industry hard, and the whole country too. Even before COVID, more than half of the country was living below the poverty line. Now even the average cost of basic necessities is 8 times the minimum wage. Zambia also owes $12 billion to its external creditors. Its debt to GDP ratio was around 120% last year, one of the highest in emerging markets. In May, the Lungu administration said that it had reached a broad agreement with the International Monetary Fund and macroeconomic and fiscal targets and policy issues during talks to secure lending, setting the stage for what investors hope will be a post-election deal. Finally, gone are the days when the idea of evening drinks was hanging out with your pals after work. In this East London cafe, you can bring your dogs along and enjoy a playful evening. After Bark, as it's known, is a cafe and bar that caters especially to your furry best friend's palate, and yet doesn't ignore yours either. We'll leave you with this report. Thanks again for watching WION.
I think we missed the trip the first 2 weeks. Although then again, like nothing else we would have died. It's like, let's see what's ahead. We're not just a dogs community centre. We're dogs and humans community centre. So the human aspect is incredibly important to us. So we put dogs first, we put dogs and humans on the same platform. I think that, especially in lockdown, there are a lot of dog owners that feel like they're by themselves and are struggling. So I think it's a really nice place for people in the community to come together and meet each other and just let their dogs run around and socialise kind of in a more chilled setting, over a drink as well.
I think it's a really new concept. Like, we've been to a couple of other dog-friendly places, but none that we've let our dog run this freely everywhere. So it's new for us. Like, when we first walked in, we were just like, oh, should we let her go? But she, like, we don't even know where she is right now. So, you know, like, I think it's a really good idea. It's getting quite spirited.